Hello there, my friends. Assalamu alaikum. It's nice to be back with you. It's been, I think, more than 3 weeks. So let us take up where I left last time. I think just by means of a little story for you before I get into heavy stuff, and I've got a lot of heavy stuff that I want to cover. Let me just, I just want to add some personal information or details that affected the position or the stance that I take. And you know what that stance is, right? That stance is that Islam is not a collection of rituals, is not an obstacle course for you to prove that you have, some sort of endurance, that you can do 50 times this, 100 times that, never sleep at night. All these things, Islam is not an endurance test. Islam is a way to regulate our own behavior based on our conscience. Islam is a pathway, and the Qur'an is the instrument, is the book, is the guide, and the messengers of Allah, of God, are there to deliver and to have the authorization to deliver those books, those scriptures. Because not anyone can just wake up and say, here's a scripture. They have to be authorized. So the messengers are authorized. And the books of God, the books of Allah, as the Qur'an is, and the most well-preserved of all these books, has the purpose of clarifying, elucidating, illuminating that pathway, which leads us to excellence in our voluntary behavior. So our voluntary behavior is not imposed on us. It's not pre-programmed into our genes. We are what is called sentient creatures. We are creatures that can feel, that can think, that can rationalize. And so for us, what we need is not a programming of our behavior, but a form of voluntary guidance offered, which we can either take or reject. And that is what Islam is. And the point of Islam, the point of this religion, the point of this Qur'an is to allow human beings to excel personally, individually, collectively, as a planet, as a country, as a city. The point of this guidance is to allow us to flourish. It is to flourish individually, collectively, and globally. And that is the whole point of this guidance. And every single item on that long list of items, points of guidance, the ayat, the signposts of this book, is there to excel us, to take us forward. So if the book says that riba, or interest, or the exploitation of people through interest levying or imposing usury should be forbidden, it is outlawed, then the intention is to save us from being debt slaves, from being where Korea is today, where I think half or 3/4 of the youth are indebted and are at the point of being suicidal. It is not a flourishing society where the people are suicidal, are drowning in debt, are being exploited by those who have money. That's just one example. Another example is rampant permissiveness in terms of our sexual ethics. We see in many countries where the permissiveness, this sexual ethics, the degrading of all ethics around sex and relationships with members of the opposite gender, where that leads to abuse of the female gender, and we see the rampant abuse of our count of feminine, of females. And we see the deprivation of men in terms of not, the whole idea of incels, involuntary celibates, where men are not getting access to women. Women are just, and women are not available to men in the form of feminine creatures, but they want to be available as co-masculine creatures. So when the Quran says that there is the feminine and there is the masculine and there is this marriage and there is this role division and there is this responsibilities on each party that is different in some ways, it's not there to be retrogressive, to be backward, to make us a backward people. It is there because God knows the nature of what man is. God knows the nature of what a woman is. So that is just two examples of how this book, how Islam, how the Quran is in fact geared at creating a flourishing society, both at an individual level as well as at a family level, group, community, country, city, at all these levels. And all we have to do is just to make the decision to align our voluntary behavior with what the guidance that God gives. Okay, that was a bit of a long intro, but here comes the little narrative story. You know, where I started gaining a deeper insight or an understanding. When I was a young man, when I was young, I had a very keen interest in the deen, in Islam, right, in the book. Maybe partly left by my father. He some books that he left behind before he passed away, and I was only 5 when he passed on to the next life. And I had a keen interest, even through the years of war, when we fought the system, the apartheid system in this country. I was always motivated by verses in the Quran, verses that says, وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Why should you not fight in the cause of those men, women, and children who are oppressed, who are calling, grant us somebody who will help, and grant us somebody who will assist. So for me, I was always motivated by the Quran. But I was always banging my head against a wall of traditionalism. Because the more I tried in my family and those who are close to us and many others also, the movement of Ahmad Qasim, the Qibla movement, and also the IUC, the more we tried to say, make Islam relevant, make Islam count, because this Islam that you're referring to isn't relevant in the world. It doesn't affect the lives of people. It doesn't free the oppressed. It doesn't open the minds of the intellectuals. It closes minds. It doesn't open. The more we try to do that, the more we were up against this wall of opposition, of traditionalism. A wall of traditionalism that was telling us, why do you want to work with these people, these poor people in very poor ghetto areas? Why would you want to work with them? They are not important. They are not Muslim, and you should help your Muslim brother. And meanwhile, my Muslim brother was well off. He was one of the wealthy people in the community. He was exploiting the poor people. The poor people exactly needed freedom from these Muslims that were hurting them financially. Not all Muslims, but there were some. And whenever we questioned these people, this stone wall of traditionalism, which came in the form of priests or those who are, you see, worse than the priests, they are the ignorant followers of those priests. They are worse than the priests. You see, the priest will always have a reasoning with you, but his followers, he doesn't teach his followers to reason. So his followers will want to throw you out of the mosque. His followers would want to boo you or dismiss you or insult you or tell you on the street, you're a danger, get the hell out of here, why are you still part of us, those are all the words that I had flung at me. And I don't have a very thick skin, but I learned over the years to get a thicker skin, because I had to take this type of abuse forever. And then suddenly one day things changed around, and this country was no longer dominated by whites. It's still dominated at an economic level, but the guy in front of you, the cop, the municipality, suddenly they were out, and there was no more white people visibly ruling you, right? Even the police, the army, they all turned black. And then these same people suddenly were sitting in a bit of a a predicament, because now those people that we stood with, they suddenly ruling the country, those who fought in the anti-apartheid struggle. But they still had their moral arrogance. I call it let's call it religious arrogance. And that religious arrogance came in the form of, why do you want to use the word Islam? You know the Muslim, you know the Sheikh, you know the Maulana, you know the Mufti. You don't have knowledge, and we would be up against that kind of religious arrogance then. And we would say, but the Qur'an is for all people. Ahmad Qasim, one of the great leaders that in my life, he used to, and we would complain to him. We would go to him and say, listen, Imam, this is what they're saying. They're telling us that we don't know Arabic. And he says, look, who does the Qur'an address? He spoke to us one day, and he said, to me particularly, he said, look at the Qur'an and see who is it addressing. And I said, yeah, and it says, oh, you who believe. It says, oh, mankind. He says, now that is the point. There is no elitist intermediary between God and you. Allah addresses mankind, or Allah addresses mu'mineen, the ordinary people who embrace the book, who embrace the message, the mu'mineen. Those are the people that God addresses. So whoever, who is there, who can insert himself within God and his subjects? It's only an imposter. And these people are imposters. And so he is the one that opened my mind. But I'm getting to the point of the story. They built so much mystique around what is Arabic and the Qur'an. And then, of course, once you know Arabic, so I made a massive effort to start learning Arabic. It's very difficult, but I started learning. And then I started seeing some of the meaning of the verses, you know. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam. So I would see, okay, that's the meaning. Ya kutiba means it was written for you, it was preached. Right. Now you start knowing the Arabic, then they hit you with a secondary attack, and that is that you cannot quote the Quran because you don't know the asbabun nuzul. You don't know the circumstances in which the verse was revealed. And then I asked, now where do I get that? Then they refer you to the hadith books, the books of tafsir, of exegesis. And I said, now where are those books? And they said, no, those books are like, there's like 10,000 of them. There's like 10,000 of them. Wow. Then I thought, but this Quran is impossible to understand. And then, but still, I thought, now I'm going to meet your challenge. So when I was about 25 years old, 26, I was just recently married with one child. Then my dear close family members, they came to me and they said, look, we have this idea that Islam has to be relevant. Islam has to wake people up, not put them to sleep. Why don't you go overseas and you go and learn, go and learn what Islam really is. Go and see what is going on there. And I was very fortunate at the time. Somebody who knew my dad and who knew our family, he was in control of the bursaries to the scholarships to Egypt. And he was so kind and gracious to put me on a scholarship to study in Egypt. Now, Egypt was always regarded as the headquarters of Islamic studies. So I boarded a plane. 2 weeks later, my wife and my child joined me there, and I spent 2 years there in the country Egypt, in and around Cairo. I registered at the Al-Azhar. I registered because I was an adult learner. I registered as a special student in a special school. Just special lessons. So they're not really there to teach you towards a particular degree. You just go there and you generally just try to sit in a fiqh class, in a history class, in an Arabic class and whatever, and you just learn, you just pick up whatever you can. And that's what I did then. Now, what happened in that next year is what blew my mind, what completely made me realize that something massive is wrong with Islam and with the whole Muslim world. Now, I come from South Africa. South Africa is a interesting country that's almost a bit like Argentina. We have a first world flavor in some ways, but also a third world, right? So we fortunately, or very fortunate, my father having been a teacher, and he was able to provide us with a kind of a middle class life, and so we were used to that. And my father, having studied also, being an educated man, a rationalist man, we always sought reason and meaning and understanding in whatever we were busy doing. And we would refuse, even my dad would refuse to listen to somebody, and even at that, somebody who's inferior to him, and follow that person blindly. However, in Egypt, at the Al-Azhar Institute, college, whatever, I realized that the Muslim world and Muslims in general are the consumers or the reproducers of static and stale knowledge. Muslims in general are the consumers and the reproducers of stale and static, antiquated information and knowledge. I found that whenever in a class, if we open a religious book, it would be 600 years old or 800 years old or something like that. And when they do an explanation on the book, the examples would be about camels and about waters that are river water and well water, whereas most people are getting their water out of a tap. You open a tap and there's the water. But we were studying about getting water in a well and I looked at this information in general. I was already, fairly highly educated. I was myself qualified as a teacher at the time. And I looked at this information, and I also studied statistics and mathematics, and I had a fairly rational brain. And I looked at everything, and I saw that the Muslim mind is an intellectually lazy and crippled mind. And the geniuses in the Muslim world are the memory geniuses. So if you're a memory genius, if you can memorize the whole phone book, that makes you a genius in the Muslim world. Not if you could understand the numbers and the names and who that person is, in the phone book. You just need to know, you need to memorize the dictionary, for example. And if somebody says to you, what is a camel? And then you memorize what is a camel. But you don't know what is a camel. You can't explain what it is. And I realized that the Muslim world, this is the headquarters of Islamic studies, is actually an intellectually dead world. And the only area where there's intellectual life would be in the non-religious sciences. So if you learn Egyptology in Egypt, you would learn something that is based on factual history. So they would base their pharaonic history, their own Egyptian history, on fact, on geographical evidence, on papyri, on inscriptions. You see, so you cannot. The whole science of Egyptology is a science. It is based on what can be ascertained from the records, from the remnants, from the geographical evidence, from the archaeological evidence. So that is how they construct the history of Egypt. Not so when it comes to the history of Islam. Then they have the system called the Sanad. They basically listen to what Tom said, Peter said, John said, James said, and so that is how they construct the story. And not multiple lines of sanads, but only one line. So it's like if one person said, another person told him, and another person, then that would be regarded as fact. No corroboration, no dual chains of transmission, because in history we can allow for verbal chains of evidence, but we would require it to be a multiplicity. For example, the Qur'an. How do we know the Qur'an is real? Because the Qur'an emanates from the four corners of the Muslim world in the same form. So the Muslim world very, very early on got divided into like the heartland, Hijaz, Medina, and then there was also Basra, a center of knowledge, then there was Damascus, and then there was, you see, so there were, very early on, there were these four corners that emerged, Basra, Baghdad, Damascus, Medina. So there were also famous scholars and writers in those four areas, like Hassan Basri, like Abdullah ibn Abbas. And so there were these major scholars sitting in the four corners, and they all read the same Qur'an. So independently, we can verify that the text of the Qur'an aligns perfectly from the four regions that the Muslim world divided into. And these regions were independent. We must remember that for many years, Baghdad was at war, or Kufa was at war with Damascus. And Medina was at war with Damascus at the time of Abdullah ibn Zubayr. In fact, there were different people ruling Medina from those who ruled Damascus. So warring corners, four corners that were at war most of the time, before the Umayyads consolidated, were all united on the same Qur'an. So in that sense, we can say that the Qur'an comes down from the four. There is no hadith, there is no tafsir that can make that same claim, that emerges from the four corners of the Muslim world in the same text. You see? So that is the difference. And some people say, the Qur'an and hadith, if you condemn hadith, you must condemn the Qur'an's authenticity also. No. The Qur'an is truly mutawatir. It emerges, or it is reproduced in parallel, independent, warring regions of the Muslim world. It gets reproduced in identical format. So while I'm in Egypt, I see the absolute rot, the lack of thinking, the lack of reasoning, the antiquated knowledge, the irrelevance of how hadith and how the Qur'an is being read only through the prism of hadith. You are not allowed to read the Qur'an. Remember, by that time, Ahmed Qasim, my own people, we read the Qur'an from the Qur'an's own perspective. We would read the Qur'an and understand it. When the Qur'an says, stand up for those who are oppressed, we would say, yes, where's the oppressed? Let's stand up for them. Right? So we wouldn't then say, yeah, but these oppressed, they refer actually to, the time of Nabi Musa, and, that is the... No, the Quran is not written as a historical, archaic, dead document. The Quran is a book. It is a divine scripture. It lives. Every verse lives for. It is not confined to a particular space or a particular time. The Quran is adaptable. It goes and it speaks to every age, to every time, to every geography. But yet here in Cairo, I find now that these people are just living, they are reading, they hardly understand the Quran, because the hadith has made the Quran sort of difficult to understand. If certain verses in the Quran, because they have to make it fit in with the hadith, they kind of like deface the meaning or the reading or the interpretation. Same as the Bani Israel did with the Torah, is where they actually just play with the meaning. They fool around with the meaning. There were small things that happened along the way there, like, for example, when the principal of my school, may God grant him a good life in the year after, and forgiveness for his offenses, and grant me forgiveness for my offenses also. One day I came to school and he called me to his office and he said to me, I am deciding to expel you. I said, but why? He says, no, because now we are all adults, right? He's an older man. He's maybe much older than me. Could be my father that time, easily. More older than my father. I said to him, but Ustaz, limaza? Mada fa'alt? What did I do? So he says, no, you stayed out for 2 days last week and I have to expel you. I said, no, but I gave you a reason. I couldn't come for those 2 days. And he said, but by the way, you never gave me anything since you came here. You never gave me £5. Everybody gives me £5. So then I realized this whole system here, the way you view Islam, your understanding, your value system, it's all completely detached from what is reality. So the guy wanted the £5 from me, which is what, that time, maybe $1 or something. So I had to give him every month a couple of bucks, just to keep him off my back. And I wasn't going to do it, but my friend said, if you don't want to be sent home or take your visa being withdrawn, then you have to do it. And then you would find these lecturers coming, and sometimes one day I walked past, I had to be at the main administration building, and I looked into into the staff room, and I was seeing little stoves, fire stoves, gas stoves, or whatever, primer stoves, whatever you can call it. And guys were sitting on the tables, on the desks, the staff tables, crossed legs, cooking tea on the tables, on their little stoves. And amidst a completely, unkept, dusty, broken down infrastructure, the rooms were looking very, very worn out, old, and just not maintained in the least form. And that image I got there, those lecturers sitting cross legs on top of the tables, not on the chairs, cooking tea on stoves there, like right there, the type of fire hazard that obviously constituted. The dust, the dirt, the lack of energy, the lack of feeling. I just that day, my eyes saw Islam. This is what Islam has become. An antiquated, irrelevant, tradition-based ideology that has, or not an ideology, a ritualistic system that has very little or no relation to reality. Meanwhile, when I go to the West, when I go to Western societies and Western areas, people don't believe blindly in anything, and they believe in, when they say tahara or cleanliness, it means cleaning your bloody front stoop, cleaning your house, sweeping the dust out, making the place look presentable. For the Muslim, tahara or cleanliness is washing 3 times your hand and putting your fingers through your beard and drinking river water and sea water and whatever, washing with sea water, river water, not drinking water that was warmed by the sun. There's a chapter called cleanliness in the Muslim books of fiqh, but it has no relation to cleanliness in the real world. That same Muslim that believes that he must wash 3 times this, 3 times that, 4 times that, he can spring water, well water, river, whatever, that same Muslim will go and dump his garbage in the street. We'll just throw it wherever is convenient. And the environment will have no reflection of cleanliness. You can even now go to where Muslims trade. And I'm not all of them, of course, there are exceptions. Cleanliness is not what is generally perceived to be an absence of pollution. The idea pollution doesn't even exist. For the Muslim, najasat or dirt or filth is just those 5 things, Filth is not related to things that are harmful, that are a medical, risk or a health risk to society. No, Muslims are not connecting their deen with what is reality, what is real, what is scientifically provable or establishable. So, unfortunately, we became detached. Our religion is a compendium of rituals. It is an endurance test. It is You do this 5 times, you do that 3 times, you do this 33 times, you do that 7 times, you do that 5, you do. These are the 12 things that make you break your salah. These are the 13 things that make you, that you, whatever that necessitates you to not make salah or that. So all of these rules, regulations, rituals, they're not there to make you better, make society better, make the world better. It is just a dumbed down, hollow, empty vessel. It is a ghost of what was once a great system of subservience, of worship to the creator of the universe. What we are left with is an empty, rotten fossil of what could be or what had to be. And we all know the history. We know when it happened. We know that the scoundrels took over the leadership of the Muslims. The scoundrels took over very early on, Muawiyah, Yazid, the Umayyads, the Abbasids, and they arrested and they killed the righteous people. They murdered the righteous people. Hussein, Hassan, Hujr bin Adi, all those who were righteous people were murdered, wiped out from the face of the earth with only 1 or 2 left. And then you sit with the scoundrels. They wrote our deen for us. You know, they used Abu Huraira. If you love Abu Huraira, I'm very sorry, but you're loving a person that lied in the name of the Prophet. I didn't say so. Go read what Sayyidatina Aisha says about Abu Huraira. She says he misquoted the Prophet, and if you misquote the Prophet, you end up in hell. So you can go and believe your Abu Huraira and follow your Abu Huraira Islam. My brothers and sisters, that is where, when I spent 2 years there, first of all, I did try to just strengthen the Arabic abilities. It's a very tough language to learn, but I did manage, and I realized afterwards, I should be focusing on the Qur'an Arabic, not on the Arabic that these people are speaking. They're not even speaking Arabic. What they're speaking is a modern concoction of English and Arabic, and they use Arabic almost like English. I'tanaka Islaman. He embraced Islam. Not Aslama, or he subdued himself to God. I'tanaka Islam, and he embraced Islam. So they're using English idiom, Western idiom, and applying it and imposing it on the Arabic. And so Arabic itself, even the Fusha, the Arabic that they use in the newsrooms and in the newspapers, is not Quranic Arabic. And I realized there that I'm in the wrong place. I should be immersing myself in the Quran, and I should be getting into the Arabic of the Quran, not this Arabic. This is a weird Arabic. The Arabic that they call the Fusha uses English idiom, Western idiom, on Arabic, and the Arabic that the people in the street speak might be closer to the true Arabic idiom, but the sentence construction, the whole construction of the language is corrupted. It is compromised. It's no longer the same language, the same grammar as the Arabic in the Quran. So, my dear friends, I just wanted to do this as an introduction video again after coming back from my health or my medical interventions, and I'm here to say that we are here to uncover, to unravel, to understand Islam as it was intended. And where is that? That is in the Quran, not in these 10,000 books. So one guy was saying, this verse, you need the hadith to explain it. And somebody said, yeah, but there's 2 hadiths that say opposite things. And he says, no, but then you must take the one that the ulama say. So I wrote it was on TikTok where sources. So you need the Quran, you need the hadith, and then you need TikTok. That's number 3 to explain the Quran. My brothers and sisters, that is exactly what we are not going to do. We are going to investigate, understand the Quran with our beautiful rational faculties, and the Quran will make sense for as long as you are sincere and honest in your pursuit. If you become devious in your pursuit, if you are trying to find loopholes or problems, and you will find it. The Quran, yahdi bi kasiran wa yudillu bi kasiran. Many people are guided and many people are go astray through it, in engaging with the Quran. So my brothers and sisters, we are here to let the sun rise on a new and the original, not new, the original understanding of what Islam is. And we will certainly make that effort, and that is how we're going to read the Quran. I want to do a video next on what is predestination and just go into that. I've got the material ready, so I think inshallah I will produce that after this video, and we'll go right back to the roots. And then there's another topic that I need to cover, and that is the idea of what do we mean by an imam, or by leadership, or by a guide. Why does Allah says for every nation there is a guide? So what do we mean by that? So inshallah, those are just some of the topics that I will try to cover in the next few videos.